All right, looks like we are streaming. Today is Thursday, March 5th, and this is our weekly development meeting. Before we get started, I wanted to give a chance for everybody to introduce themselves. So let's start with Tim.
Unmute. I'm Tim. I'm here from St. Paul, Minnesota. And I've been working on an issue to get, or advocating right now to get content type, date, and author configuration into Core, as well as a couple of other issues. That's all I have.
Jeff.
Hello, Jeff, Massachusetts. I'm gonna see what's going on in Backdrop. I'm interested in telemetry, but I'm not sure we'll talk about that today.
Greg.
Greg joining from Melbourne, interested in many things and to help as much as I can. I've been doing code reviews lately for different issues and testing. And I have a really big backlog of issues that I want to work on.
Nate.
I am Nate Lampton from Oakland, California. And today we've got some updates on config overrides, which are exciting. But I'm also here to hear what issues need feedback. Usually Doc Wilmot creating a whole bunch of them and requesting not some eyeballs. So yeah, we'll see as we go through them.
Joseph.
Hi, I'm Joseph. I'm from Las Vegas, Nevada. And lately I've been working on testing performance and then doing code reviews. I'm not working on that.
Andy.
Andy mentioned that he has no mic.
If you want to do an introduction, you can type into the chat and we can read it. So you don't have to be able to talk. You also don't have to do an introduction if you don't want to. Andy says hi from the Cayman Islands.
He didn't need to say that, did he?
All right, I am Jen. I'm from California, and I am looking forward to seeing what issues need attention this week. So let's see, before we get to the issues, let's do some updates from the Project Management Committee. There's one very exciting announcement that we didn't get to last week, I don't think. Olaf Grabienski has joined the Project Management Committee. So I think we announced the other two members last week, but not Olaf. So just give him a warm welcome and say we're very excited to have him. In the near future, we will have a lot of blog posts coming out, some of them from the PMC, some of them from general community about all of the changes in growth that we're experiencing. So I would encourage everybody to keep an eye on our blog. In contributed projects this week, there are two brand new projects out this week, Feldfield Paths and Matomo Reports. And we also have 4 new releases for existing projects. I don't know what the GitHub API is on there. Jeff, did you add that?
Yeah, just trying to draw Nate's attention to the pull request there.
Okay. And I think that's it for what's going on in Contrib. So I'd like to turn it over to Nate to talk about core issues.
Okay, hi folks. So we are currently on Backdrop 115, still on 115. It's March 5th. 115 came out January 15th. There are a number of issues that are in the 115.1 milestone that could be given attention. We don't have any to raise up during this meeting, other than Joseph's issue 4306, making tests faster and some better visibility into tests. That's been at needs review for the past week. it looks like it's all just nice minor improvements to the testing system. And yeah, we could just use some eyeballs on that to see if that's all ready to go. Thank you, Joseph, for getting that all prepared. Sorry, it hasn't yet gotten the attention that it needs past your efforts. So 4306 could use some eyeballs, and then that's the only issue that we actually have for the 115 release for bug fixes to bring up. 116 will be the next minor version. It'll come out May 15th with feature freeze May 1st. For me personally, at least, it feels like now that we're in March, you know, we're at least in the same season as as the next release, which makes it feel more imminent. So things that we've got cooking for 116 include allow any config value to be overridden via settings.php. That's 2805. This has been RTBC last week, and I merged it just earlier today. So that's great. It's now completed. Next up is enabling autocomplete on all link and path fields, issue 3764. BW Panda or Peter is the advocate for that, and it's been RTBC'd by Doc Wilmot just in the past couple of days. So that looks excellent and is probably imminently going to be completed. Next up is base and sub install profiles. Profiles right now currently don't have the ability to inherit from other profiles, and issue 3174 also from BW Panda makes it so that functionality is possible. Joseph said that he reviewed that just earlier today. Joseph, has that been marked RTBC, or did you just provide additional feedback?
I gave feedback, just basically saying that we need some way of verifying it with tests, and then everything else looks good to go.
Okay, yeah, excellent. I love it when other people say that stuff needs tests, because then I'm not always the bad guy. So thank you, Joseph. Awesome.
I knew you were going to say that.
Okay. Next up, this cool issue that Doc Wilmot has been working on, new text format configuration user interface, issue 1032. There's been a lot of activity on this in the past week. Gregory, you were one of the ones providing feedback on it. Could you give us an update on the status there?
Yeah, so this issue was raised like really on. It's one of the early issues. It's like back in 2015. So the problem with the text formats is that we have 3 different sets of settings which are codependent, and they are presented in the user interface via a series of checkboxes, which then, if depending on whether they're checked or not, they make other controls, draggable table rows and vertical tabs appear, and the user experience is not that great. So the consensus was that we should sort of like consolidate all those into a single draggable table with checkboxes and with buttons that open dialogues so that we can configure them. So the most current implementation of that it does exactly that. So the feedback that has been going back and forth between Andy, Peter, and myself is that the current implementation is that the forms for configuring each filter are loaded in the single page, and then they're hidden via JavaScript. And then when you click the buttons to load individual configuration, then the portion of the form gets loaded in a dialog. Then when you submit that form, that dialog, then the values get copied back to the hidden form. And then finally, when you save the main page, like when you submit a button in the main page, these are the values that get saved. So there's a bit of, this is the bit of implementation that needs feedback, whether it's appropriate or not. And ideally, it shouldn't work that way. But the difference between that and how, for example, the dialogues in layouts work is that so if you disable JavaScript, the dialogues for layouts and other places, they have a path so that these settings will load in a different page, but this doesn't happen with the filters. So yeah, so basically this is the feedback that we're waiting for, like what would be the best way to sort of like implement that in a way that it doesn't break when JavaScript is not enabled, but yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, I can post some comments to that issue. I probably need to have a full look at it to really make a good suggestion. But layouts and views, for example, the two places that we have a lot of dialogues, they both work in a similar fashion, that there's a temporary location for the in-progress work that make it so that as you navigate between pages or in between dialogues, it's updating a temporary location. And in Backdrop, there's a table simply called temp store that when you're editing a view or editing a layout, it's putting the full view object or layout object into the temp store. And then you're actually editing not what's in the database, but what's in the temp store. And we could apply that pattern to text formats, you know, but it would be a totally different approach to what Doc Wilmot's done so far, it sounds like.
Yeah. So there's a comment from Doc Wilmot from 13 days ago, which he was exploring that as an option, saying that save the form values in the temp store and update the underlying form with JavaScript. And then also open the dialogues and then populate the values from the temp store. But I think that he has hit some implementation complexity along the way, so he's chosen to go with whatever the current pull request has been implemented.
Yeah. So the current pull request seems like it would still work though without JavaScript. It sounds like you just wouldn't get any dialogues. All of the entire form would all just be shown all at once, all on one giant page.
Yeah.
Which is what it does right now without JavaScript. It literally, the current page would stay unchanged probably without JavaScript. So that probably made it so that testing was really easy because nothing changed for tests.
Now, there's other things that are sort of like satellite issues to that. Like if the dialogue's open and then we submit the dialogues, we need to make sure that there's validation going on for whatever we save.
Yeah.
And then I'm not sure because I haven't explored any options. Like maybe we could hide and show those settings like in a way like that's similar to field sets, expanding and collapsing, so that it's not a huge, set of mini forms comprising a huge form.
Yeah, you're right. Things like validation would be a big issue. Yeah, that you really would want the form to validate before you close the dialogue, and exposing errors if you tried to submit the form and the form fields were hidden that the validation error occurred on, that would be bad. Okay, so it sounds like there's some actual user interface repercussions from the approach that's been taken that possibly need to be solved and possibly aren't possible to solve with the current approach.
Yeah, in case you didn't see Andy's comment, he says that he expects Nate to be amused by the jQuery, and I forgive you in advance.
Okay. Andy, have you also been working on that same issue for the text format UI? Oh, Andy is Doc Wilmot. Oh.
Yes. Yes.
Jeez, that's just embarrassing. Okay. Hi, welcome. I'm really glad you're here. Okay. Great. Anything else that we should discuss in the text format UI? 1032 sounds like it's held up on some more in-depth feedback, and that's
Yeah. Otherwise, the pull request works as expected. So yeah, only a few minor issues that I mentioned, but I think it's on, if Dr. Watt did not already fix those, they're on his radar, like small things like when disabling a filter, a checkbox for a filter, the respective buttons for CK editor, they still appear there, even though they shouldn't, things like that. But it's just tiny things that we can solve.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, things start getting pretty complicated with some things like the CK editor buttons. When you like drag them in, they modify the other text format settings. Yeah, that's
There's a reason why the UI for this page was so complex to begin with, but we need to sort of like untangle this mess and make it simpler, because it's a bit terrible the way that it is now.
yeah. I'm starting to think really strongly that that doing the state approach is the right thing to do, because it's starting to, there's so many steps involved that configuring a text format is that is not less complicated than a layout in a lot of ways. Like it's a similarly complicated task. That pattern of using state and updating a temporary object might be the way that we should proceed.
Yeah, I think that in some earlier, unless I'm mistaken, comments, Doc Wilmot mentioned that earlier on, a few years back, he mentioned proposing that respective paths for those filters settings were introduced, but you were objecting to that idea that back then, and maybe you've changed your mind now in the meantime.
Objecting to dialogues, or which part?
So see how all the rest of the UI or the admin interface where we use dialogues, if there's no JavaScript when you open it, it just has a path. So this thing opens in a new page. It doesn't. We don't have that implemented for filters.
Oh yeah, I think that still it still needs to function even without JavaScript, even today. Just because if there's only, if we move fully to dialogues or multiple pages for steps like views or layouts, we need like just leaving the current page as it is. If that's only used for non-JavaScript, that seems very unusual. Like we need the non-JavaScript version to act the same way so that we can have test coverage on it. So it would step through the same process as though it were in dialogues, only they're separate pages. Yep, still the same. If we use temp store, we could have done this in a few minutes. Objecting to temp store approach, essentially. Not totally following. Oh, not literally. You couldn't literally fix it in a couple of minutes. So Andy is saying in the chat that I think that you're saying that you oppose the object the temp store approach. But if we had used temp store, it would have been a lot easier. It would have been done sooner.
I think that sure. what he's saying is that he mentioned this in the past and you objected. I'm not sure that he says that he's objecting. I could be wrong. Yep. So you objected.
Okay,
in the past.
I objected. I retract my objection.
Okay.
Okay. And really, like in almost all cases, like I'm not really strongly in favor or opposed to any approach. I just want things that are maintainable and hopefully not too difficult. So if it's the easiest approach, we should take the easiest approach as long as it's still testable.
Yeah, I think that this meeting has answered Doc Wilmot's question, so I think that he has what he needs to go forward with a simpler solution.
Great.
So we're good. Hooray, there you go.
Hooray, he says. I feel like when this happens, we should have another person just speak as though they were that person in the meeting.
Muppet.
Actually, maybe not. I take that back. That could be a terrible idea. Okay. All right. So next up, Better Workflow States, issue 1475. Also, Doc Wilmot's spearheaded issue. We were talking about this before the recording started.
So,
Gregory, you just raised your hand.
yeah. So this is temporarily parked. We need to formulate, before we start getting into an endless discussion and implementation and reverting the implementation and changing that all over again, and by we, I mean Jen, team, and myself, we're trying to sort of like formulate in a shared document, like Word document, what the objective is, what the goal is. And once we've finalized that and terminology that is going to be used, we're going to pass it on to Doc Wilmot to sort of like finalize the implementation, or maybe it would need to be a totally different pull request. So yeah. And there's certain aspects, certain features that the team has mentioned would like to see, that these should be split out to follow-up issues, specifically being able to specify states for forward or backward revisions and the likes.
Okay, so that means that and the people moving that forward include yourself, Tim, and anyone else?
Jen.
And Jen.
Um,
Okay, thank you.
I just reshared the links to the documents that we're working on and get in Zulip if anybody wants to peek.
Yeah, and it's also posted to the issue 1475, which has been helpful. Okay, next up, this new issue, which I haven't looked at yet at all, but Tim, you are the advocate for issue 2379, allow the customization of author and date display. Can you give us an update on what that issue is and its current status?
Sure. This issue, I think, has been, or the PR has been around for a little while now, and it basically allows in each content type for the editor to select a custom date format and have some control over the author display right out of the box. And we have a PR that's working nicely. The status appears to be that it's working. Gregory has expressed a couple of comments, but he seems to be looking for comments on his comments, if I understand correctly. Gregory, like you weren't sure if your comments were right and you would like some feedback. But anyways, I think a little bit of attention from some people able to do code review, and this could be a really nice feature. I just want to mention that I know I have been really held back by the lack of this feature in the past, and recently we had somebody looking for this feature in the forum, like basically how do I customize the date format, and it's kind of complicated right now. So this would really make that easier. And I often say it's like when I open a raw backdrop site, it's like one of the first things that jumps out to me is the format. It's like I want to change that right away, and it's not easy. So that's just an argument why this would be important. So hopefully, if we just get some eyes on it, I think we can get this done, unless some objections are raised.
Mm-hmm. Is this using tokens for the posted by date, or is it PHP date formats, or both?
I was just going to look to remind myself. Gregory, do you remember? Can you answer that?
I don't have it recent. No, sorry. So I'll have to take a look at the pull request again. Sorry.
Okay.
I think it might allow both. Could that be? I'm gonna look, but
It looks like
I remember liking it. I mean, I just like the way it works. I think it's a nice feature.
mm-hmm. And this is per content type configuration of the submitted by line, which seems to include the date and possibly the author information. But
yes,
but that would allow you to do things like if you had a field for real name on a person's profile, you could alter the submitted by line to say posted by their author's real name instead of their username.
Yep.
Like,
so it supports token. Last I remember, it supports tokens. Support for token was added.
That would be really neat, because honestly, posting by usernames is no. Like for like something like you know, a computing oriented website, sure, aliases might be used for authors, but in the most situations of content authoring and even blog posting, you use people's real names
Yeah,
as the author, not a username.
there are cases where you allow the email to be used as a username as well, and that exposes a risk. So we had a situation in GovCMS where government emails were exposed because of metadata. Anyways, so having the real name or some first name and initial of the last name instead of the emails or the usernames is better, because if you expose usernames, then bots can use those to brute force. So it becomes a security issue.
So
And
I'm
this
just looking
mitigates
at
the
it,
fact.
and it definitely uses tokens. It does not have a field for the PHP right there. You could use that to create a date format, and then use the token for the date format.
Okay. Huh. Well, neat. Very, very cool. So it's not actually just the date display, it's the entire submitted by line. Oh, it's this author. I see. The authoring information. So the byline and the date display. Okay. Wow. Very cool. For some reason, I thought author date was a thing. But
Like the default right now is a token for the date, by, and then a token for the author. So you could change the word by to written, you know, to whatever word you want, and you could change the tokens. You could change their order.
you could just remove the username
could remove
entirely
that.
if you're on a single.
Yep.
If it's a single person's blog, which
We
happens
looked
all the
at
time.
doing this in Backdrop 1, and there were some issues with the breaking template files. So we just need to make sure that I mean, it sounds to me like it should be fine, because in template files, it should just be printing the like submitted variable. But if there is like a theme function that actually includes like username by whatever, like I think there's like a theme, I don't remember, but there were 2 places in core that used this. One was like on nodes, one was on comments, and I remember there being an issue with it, so it got postponed. So we'll just need to check that. This sounds like a cleaner approach than what we were looking at back then, but I just want to throw that out there as being something we should double check.
So I remember now that one of my objections or concerns is that we are replacing a translatable string with something that has tokens. So we have configuration translation now, but sorry, I'd have to sort of like rethink on what we're introducing here.
Yeah.
The benefit that we're introducing is much better. It's just that we might be making the life of translators a little bit more difficult.
I think it might be okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, it'll have some repercussions for sure.
Yeah, because now you use the single thing for all content types, so you could translate that to whatever language you want and you'd be set. But now if you start configuring per content type, then translators would have to account for that or for the words being used there. But yeah.
Yeah, they would have to translate every format of the authored by line, which is the same for everything that is stored in config. Like as you change like the label of a field, well, then you have to update the translations. Yeah. Okay, cool. Well, that sounds really neat. Thank you, Tim, for posting that update and being the advocate for it. Okay, last up we have providing a way to re-enable disabled text formats, issue 1575. Gregory, are you able to give us an update on that issue?
Sorry, bear with me. Oh yes, sorry, there hasn't been no activity there. I think it needs code review at some point. I think that Dr. Wilmot got fed up with waiting for me to do it, and then he just sent in and filed the pull request against Jens. So this needs to be tested and reviewed. But where we were left was that the implementation that we had ready back in August, and then we missed the 114 and the 115 deadlines, the feature freezes, was that we were changing so many things that it was affecting the way that text formats actually, we were affecting the text formats and what was allowed and what not. So the current implementation is like it has far less changes and it touches less things, so it's more, I guess, simple, and has less risk of messing with formats.
Okay, yeah, so needs code review. Sounds like that's where we're at. And I think last we looked at this, I think we were all like, yes, that sounds like it's the way to go. So it sounds like it just needs eyeballs. Okay. Anything else that anyone would like to bring up for the 116 release as being an issue that is likely to happen that we have an advocate for or that we should discuss? Okay. All right. General discussion, Q&A. Looks like, Jeff, you have a little announcement here.
Yep, just Backdrop Weekly #2 is out, so I'd be glad if you guys peruse that, read that, and solicit if you guys got blog posts or anything like that you want included in upcoming weeklies, then please submit them.
I've read that. Thanks, Jeff. Just a question. What's the drive between posting those blog posts there instead of backdropcms.org?
The blog post would most likely be posted on backdropcms.org or somebody's personal blog. I'm just gonna link to it and publicize it in the weekly.
So this is sort of like a digest of
Correct.
blog
Yep.
posts. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. And also just like, I totally understand and even encourage the, like just the distribution of like people having personal control over, what it is that they find interesting going on. And like, I think the more sources that we have saying and talking about Backdrop, the better, actually. But I do agree that backdropcms.org should have the canonical, blog posts and announcements and things like that. Okay. Anything else? Anything else you guys would like to discuss? Go ahead.
I have something. So this was triggered by a comment, a feedback that I got in 2432. So this started as a really simple pull request, but then I touched the views.inc file and I got freaked out. My OCD started kicking in with the comments. So it ended up like there was a single line that I needed to change, but then I changed like 385 lines of comments. And you know me. So here's the thing. I understand that I haven't seen so far us opening issues specifically for fixing comments. Would that be the best approach, or would you like me to keep that in a separate commit? Would that make it easier to review?
Let's rewind a little bit. Views.inc, is that part of the views module or something else?
Yes, that's views. Yeah.
And so you want to fix code comments in Backdrop's views.inc, but
actually, so the issue was a file that issued back in 2016-15, and it was every configuration file in views has a key in it that says core, and then it has a version, and the version could be 1 or no or ace, or like it has arbitrary things. And now I discovered that it has been removed in D8 as well because it's not being used anyway, and I don't think that we use it anyway. So initially the pull request was to remove every occurrence of that from JSON files, existing JSON files, and then also from install files that do the updates, so that we don't end up with that. And specifically the .inc file, what I change is I make it so that each time that you save a file, if it includes that line, it sort of like strips it out, and it's being done simply by removing a single line.
Yeah, that all sounds fine.
Yeah, yes, but in that file, I've changed like 300 lines of comments because they were either exceeding the 80 character limit, or they were starting with lowercase or don't have dots at the end. It's like I was freaking out each time that this was not the first time that I saw this file, and it's like usually when I see such things, I fix them. But rightfully, Peter said that it's hard to review such a big change. So what I'm asking in general, not for this specific, but in general, when we want to fix sort of like satellite things like this, like comments, which are extensive changes, but not substantial to the specific pull request, do we split it out in a specific separate issue to fix the comments? Do we keep it in the same pull request, but have a separate commit so that people can view that commit separately? What would be the best approach?
Yeah, if it's a lot of updating comments separated out. If it's a comment that is adjacent to a line that you're changing that's relevant to the change, then do it in the same issue.
Yes.
But especially if you start changing comments that don't touch any of the changed code, then that should be separated.
As in a separate pull request or a separate commit of the same?
Separate
Good.
pull request.
Okay, and so also an issue attached to that, like raise an issue and say fix comments in that. Okay,
Yep.
cool.
Separate issue and pull request.
Okay, yeah, makes sense.
Gregory, it sounds like you need PHPCS.
I know this was the next thing that I was going to discuss. I know that you started implementation of that or considering implementing that for us, and you have an issue to sort of like slowly start fixing things in batch, and you requested help, but I don't know what the status of that ticket was. I think that you said we're gonna.
Yeah, if I recall correctly, I got stuck on ZenCI stuff. I wonder if we could, Nate, how do you feel about having a Travis file just for PHPCS and ZenCI for functionality tests?
So one thing we've been looking into, and I think we've already opted in the Backdrop organization to, is GitHub Actions. So GitHub now has a CI integrated into it of some sort. I think that I would like to investigate that as our primary avenue, and then if that doesn't pan out, then we can look at alternatives. But in any case, it's usually the process for setting it up is usually figuring out the scripting and the commands that need to be run, and then adapting it to an individual CI platform is pretty trivial. Like it's usually the same thing, just in a slightly different format for each CI platform. So if you wanted to, or if you found Travis to be more accessible, getting it working on Travis would be a very, very strong start to make it so that we could adapt it to Actions. So either approach would be fine.
Can Jeff, because you've worked on that before, can PHPCS specifically check only the files that's in the specific pull request? Instead of
not PHPCS all by itself, but we can, I think with Grump PHP or some other helper things, we can get it to do that.
Yeah, so that we fix so that we don't have like a huge list of failures in the CI when we file pull requests. Or maybe we should dedicate some issue to just fix everything, and once everything's fixed and see the PHPCS doesn't complain anymore, then move from that. But yeah, it seems like a bit of work.
It is.
Okay. Anything else you guys would like to bring up?
Quick question. How do people make UI mockups? Are there any secrets to like making the nice backdroppy buttons really quick, or is it just hard work?
I know,
like Jen and Nate, or Jen and Gregory, who do that a lot. I don't know about you, Nate.
I usually, like, there's two ways that I could do it. Either if I'm editing the code of a form, for example, I might just mock up the form. It won't work when you submit it, but the form elements that I add are actual code. Otherwise, the mockup is just, you know, when you right click on Chrome and you select Page Inspector, you can edit any HTML. So I usually do either one of those and then a screenshot. And there's a few.
I do the same.
A few, yeah. So there's a few plugins a couple of plugins for Chrome and other browsers that allow you to take full screen screenshots, like they scroll the page as you do. So that's what I use after that.
Thank you. That's helpful. I've just been beating my head against the wall with GIMP trying to make my own buttons. And
Yeah, no, what I'll usually do is take the entire form element and copy its HTML and then edit another thing and then paste in the whole HTML and then selectively like hack individual things. And so sometimes I'll even go to another form has a select list, for example, and copy its HTML out and then paste it into the other one. And sure, the name and attributes and stuff like that are all messed up, but it doesn't matter because it's just a picture.
Yeah, exactly. I
Yeah.
do the same.
Nice. I didn't think of that. Thank you.
Okay. Well, that's it then. It's 2:00, so let's call it time. Thank you guys all for joining the meeting. As always, really appreciate you guys being here, and even more all of the work that everyone's been putting in day after day. We really have been seeing a lot of activity, particularly in the PMC and leadership side. Like there's been a lot of really great momentum there and a lot of shifting and changing around, but we're still seeing the regular all the time, stuff is happening in the issue queue. So thank you all for all of your work. That's it. Thank you. And we'll see you guys again next weekend on the
See you guys.
internet.
Bye.
Goodbye.